Generally speaking, in general terms, the way to manage Arduino code is typically to save it on the PC you are currently using. However, if you ever need to work on another PC or share your code with someone else, like I mentioned when explaining libraries, the sketch project files are saved in a folder named Arduino within Documents on Windows systems, and similarly in Documents folders on Mac systems. This means that you would indeed need to compress or zip up the desired project folder before sharing it, which can be quite cumbersome at times. Additionally, even though I have multiple hard drives and consider them relatively safe, I don't fully trust them 100%. If something happens unexpectedly to those important project files, or if there is an issue, it can become very difficult indeed to recover. So in my case, I store it in the cloud, because if I save it locally, it could lead to difficulties if a problem arises. So, in my case, I manage my Arduino code in a certain way, and I will present you with various methods that you might find convenient. The simplest method is to go to create arduino.cc. While we are currently using a Java-based Arduino IDE, on the PC, create arduino.cc is a web-based Arduino IDE that operates in a web browser. By signing up and logging in at create.arduino.cc, you can use this IDE, which is almost identical to the Arduino IDE we are already using. So, if you write and save it here, it will simply be stored on the Arduino server. If you want to share, you can share the sketches saved here with other people. The downside is that, to be honest, I also don't use complex Java IDEs on the PC for actual development. Since we rely on these tools, there is a limitation that we have to use only the features of these specific IDEs. Additionally, depending on whether it is free or paid, there are restrictions on functionalities. So, for those who want to use it lightly, I recommend using the web IDE for Arduino. Next, just simply looking at it now, you will see that there are many projects where you can organize Arduino code into just a single file. There will be many sketch files. If you want to share an Arduino file with someone, it can be quite cumbersome indeed to share each file individually. In this particular case specifically, you can simply copy the code directly and paste it into a site called Pastebin. When you go to Pastebin, you can share not only code but also text. It doesn't have to be C code. It could even be Python or anything else, making it very easy indeed to share your content there. A particularly useful feature is syntax highlighting. For example, if you select C, the code will then be syntax highlighted when shared. I will show exactly how this works in practice. You may also set whether your shared file completely disappears after some time or not at all, and choose whether only people with a link may access it, or if anyone anonymously might view. In my own case specifically, I'll set for 10 minutes duration before clicking Create New Paste, which provides syntax highlighting automatically and allows sharing of URL links easily with others. As mentioned earlier, it's certainly not limited solely towards just sharing C files. Here you can also share Python, code or code in any other language you prefer. So for simple sketch projects that are contained in a single file, sharing them using something like Pastebin is more convenient. Next, I recommend using GitHub for managing Arduino code. In the case of libraries, you can create separate repositories to manage them. For really complex Arduino projects that may need to go into production later, It's advisable to create a repository for management. However, creating repositories can be quite cumbersome because, as I mentioned before, Arduino is often used for prototyping, which can lead to a significant increase in sketches. If you create a repository every time, it can become inconvenient to manage. If you go to github.com, there is a service called GitHub Gist. It is convenient for managing short pieces of code. In some ways, it is similar to Pastebin, but slightly different. For example, while Pastebin is easy to use for managing a single file, GitHub Gist is also convenient for managing one file, but it can handle multiple files as well. For instance, we might have worked on several files. If you look at this code related to the package, you will notice that if I name it main Arduino Ino, it will automatically provide Arduino-related syntax highlighting on GitHub. This feature is particularly useful for developers who work with Arduino projects, as it makes the code more readable and easier to understand. Then you can add the file package. Next, simply follow the instructions provided in the documentation to ensure everything is set up correctly. To proceed, follow these steps. First, perform the task in this specific manner. After that, we will assign a name to the file. For simplicity, let's choose an arbitrary name such as packet example. This name is just a placeholder, and we will refer to it as packet example throughout the process. By doing so, we ensure consistency and clarity in our documentation and communication. You can also upload multiple files like this, and then, for reference, you can choose whether to make it visible to everyone, anonymously, or only to those who have the link. If you want to manage it personally, you can set it to secret. Let's try setting it to secret. Then, if you do it this way, you can code. Another very advantageous and convenient aspect is that because of revision control and version management, if you decide to edit something and change it to STX, for example, let's assume you change STX to both A and B after updating, you can very easily track the version related to the modifications you made later. So, if you want to go back to a previous revision where you made various development changes, you can very easily do that. Even if only people with the link have access, if you want to communicate with your team members, you can leave comments here to interact with each other, thus making management easier. Additionally, if you download from this state, this is how the files are stored securely. When you extract the files in a specific manner like this, they will be unpacked in this way. However, when these particular files are extracted, then main sketch file is named packet example. Please change your folder name to match exactly with this one. And if you open it from here on out, it will open up smoothly in Arduino IDE, just like so. Now, according to your preferences, the Arduino web editor, or you can use Pastebin, and in my case, I often use the service GitHub Gist. In this session, I explained how to manage or share Arduino code. Even if your project seems light, it's a good idea to archive or save it properly. Because later on, when you work on another project, the likelihood of reusing the code or information from previous projects is quite high. Even if you start with small tasks, I think it would be good to develop the habit of managing your code and projects from the beginning, using the services I introduced today. Then, I'll see you next time.